breakout stars, and a glimpse of the future. We're breaking down all the standouts from Iowa's open spring practice.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. I've been covering the Iowa Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio here in the state of Iowa, including currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network. We have stations all across the state. Western Iowa and Sioux City, and the eastern border in the Quad Cities, in between Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, and our flagship 106.3 KXNO. You can catch me each weekday from noon to 2 with Ken Miller. This episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. It is that time of year. Spring football is in the books, but with the transfer portal, the conversation never dies. We got lots to get into here today. We're talking football and a whole lot of it, plus a little basketball talk as well coming your way. We'll be joined a little bit later on. Scott Dochterman is going to join us from The Athletic. He is part of the Iowa Beat, also covering college football. We'll talk to him a lot about the NFL draft, and a draft where we see 5 Hawkeyes selected. We'll get into that and then talk a little bit about what he saw on Saturday at Kinnick Stadium with the open practice. What's the latest in the Iowa Hoops basketball portal? We'll talk about that as well coming up here a little bit later on. But we begin today with a look back at the open practice. And we talked yesterday about the improvements of the passing game and what we saw from the assembled quarterbacks, Jackson Stratton, Hank Brown, those guys, what they were able to do. Even Jimmy Sullivan, his first appearance in front of a crowd in Iowa City, what we saw from them, but most importantly, what we saw down the field with the passing attack in comparison to what we saw in the last open practice, and just how different it was, and the excitement that continues to build for this Iowa offense and what it can be after showing signs of life a year ago, improving scoring, improving that running game, and now with the competent quarterback, with the wide receiver group that, dare I say, is deep. Yeah, this could be something we haven't seen very often, certainly in Iowa City in Kirk Ferentz's 26 years. So a lot about that every day, as you know. You can go back and listen to it if you missed it yesterday, and we got you covered each and every day. Today, though, I want to talk about a little bit more some of those individual stars, some of the individual players that I think jumped out, guys that have created some buzz, not just what they did on Saturday, but for some of them, what they did throughout. And also, I want to give a little shout out here because I'm going to use it, at least with the offensive guys, as Cal Huseman from HawkeyeReport.com. He was able to put together kind of a stat list of everything that we saw. So very interesting to take a look at that. And starting with the quarterback spot, you got Hank Brown, 7 of 18, 72 yards and a touchdown. Not great by any means. I mean, 7 of 18, not elite, but I think you saw some things. He really settled in and I thought made some really good throws. Jackson Stratton was outstanding, 14 of 23, 176, a touchdown. Also did have an interception. And then after some shaky moments early, Jimmy Sullivan, 7 of 10 for 47 yards. Hank Brown, 6'4", live arm, really intrigued about him going forward. I believe he'll be the backup quarterback. He'll be the guy that will be the number 2 going into the season, but a guy that just has a skill set we haven't seen very often in Iowa City. Athletic, big arm, good size, kind of has everything that you're looking for, and excited about his future as he'll be the backup, I believe, to Mark Gronowski this year. I didn't see a ton out of the running backs. The one guy that bears mentioning is Nathan McNeil. Comes in, and coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking a lot of Iowa football and recruiting, both in the past and the present, as we're going to be part of things coming up tomorrow with Brian Smith. And I want to get his perspective because he's based out of Florida, and what he thinks about McNeil, because he was not widely regarded, but it looks like Iowa maybe find a diamond in a rough here as he showed a little bit of burst. He's got some speed to him, good size. Kamari Moulton, you know what you're going to get. He's going to be the starter this year. Jazzion Pedersen, a reliable one. I thought another guy that jumped out, though, was Terrell Washington Jr. Again, TJ, He's so different than a lot of the guys in there and what it was. I think everybody knows, every day, as you certainly know this, Brevin Dahl's my dude, and disappointed that he wasn't going to be out there. Wide receivers, here's the stats for the receivers. 6 catches for Vanderzee, 52 yards after bursting onto the scene a year ago. Have to be really excited about him. Seth Anderson. If Seth Anderson can have a healthy season, he's going to have a big one. He really is. He's going to have a big season. We saw that even halfway through the year when he got back out there this past season. Just he's dynamic. He's got speed. He knows how to run routes. He's been waiting, biding his time, and well, he's been on the shelf a whole lot because of injuries. I think this is the year. If he can put it all together health-wise, he's going to be there. One other name, though, at wide receiver, I think we really need to talk about, and that is KJ Parker. Now, he's not, I don't believe, a guy that's going to be probably even your number 3 or number 4 guy, but with his speed and just his playmaking ability, I think he's going to be a difference maker. And I think he's going to be a guy, there might just be a player or two this year that he's going to make that are going to be big ones. He seems to have that kind of skill set, and he's going to be ready to go. Certainly excited about that. So just some numbers to throw out you, some offensive guys, but jumping over the defensive side, as we're looking at these different players that have either stood out on Saturday or just names that continue to get buzz, talking to some people in Iowa City, the ones that continue to bounce out. I just thinking of this freshman class that is now redshirt freshman. Mentioned Brevin Dahl, Xavier Williams, a couple of those guys there at the running back spot. KJ Parker is another name that you talk about. That offensive line class that's really good. But think of what they've had defensively, and already 3 guys that are on both the defensive line and the linebacker spot that continue to be talked about time in and time out. And talk about the defense, talk about guys that are popping, and these names seemingly always come up. Up front, Jimmy Shineke, out of Texas. Looks ready-made, a guy that has good pass rush skills already. He's definitely one. Devin Kennedy, and if you remember his dad, Jimmy, a monster of a man. Now, if he fills out a little bit more, he continues to add to that frame. I'm interested when they update the rosters and the weights, what he's going to be up to. Still look slight to be a D tackle at the Big Ten level, but if he can get there, look out. Joseph Anderson, another guy coming off the edge. So you got 3 guys there. And then that linebacker crew and all the guys from Eastern Iowa that all came in together, and a group that continues to get a whole lot of buzz. I think those 3 linebackers with Bovington, Reese, those are kind of guys that are going to be solid contributors right away on special teams and are going to be able to build on that. A couple more redshirt freshmen. Jalen Watson, Rashad Godfrey, both those guys at cornerback kind of filling out the depth of that spot. So just looking back, and I know it's early, and a lot of times those guys will start to see some that just fall by the wayside. It's just a numbers game. But also remember kind of the importance of roster building at Iowa and that class. And those are names I think that are going to be incredibly important to keep this class together and keep building and keep the momentum that they put together here recently on the recruiting trail, bringing in the right kind of guys and then filling in the gaps. I was not going to be able to be a team that goes out like Ole Miss and brings in, 12 blue star or blue chip transfer portal additions. That's not Iowa. Filling gaps. If you need to go out and spend for a particular position, you can do that. But that's never going to be the backbone of the Iowa football program under Kirk Ferentz, nor should it, because financially they don't compete in those waters. So the way that it's set up is good. And this group, though, going forward, they're going to be a piece going forward. I liked what I saw from CJ Bell, the freshman. And again, talking about that depth that they're looking to create at cornerback, bringing in with what we've seen from TJ Hall, obviously the experience of Deshaun Lee, now bringing in another face as they get the transfer Barrios coming in from South Dakota. So you create a little bit more there. The young guys, Watson, Godfrey, and you throw CJ Bell in that group, definitely didn't look out of place for a kid that should be in high school right now, finishing up his senior year. Liked what you saw. Good frame, 6'1", good size from him. I got to mention Max Llewellyn because there were times he was just completely unblockable. Again, doing it against an offensive line that was missing some guys. And speaking of offensive line, one final name for you. I definitely think, want to shout out Trevor Lauk. He's a guy that I think everybody was really high in high on coming out of high school. You look at the list that he had of teams that were after him. This is a group that I would normally doesn't win recruiting battles. And certainly for guys from a couple states over, like in Indiana, like Trevor Lauk. We'll see what happens with Bryce George, the incoming transfer portal candidate from Ferris State, and how he translates and if he's going to be able to be a left tackle. But it's not perfect because of the lack of experience. But Trevor Lauk, it might not be this year. He's going to be really good. He's going to get there. And you saw those pieces, I thought, on Saturday. I think you've seen that and heard about that as he continues to grow. Trevor Lauk, we'll see. But for the here and now, definitely feeling good about his progression that he made here during the spring. We'll have a whole lot more wrapping things up on spring. We're going to go position by position here as well over the next week or so and really breaking things down on what we saw, what we learned from each position group and kind of diving a little bit deeper into this football roster as we finish up spring football. Now get ready for the long off season, if you will, before we get back into it in August. And of course, a kickoff coming up in September. This is Locked On Hawkeyes, your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. I got you covered on the Hawkeye front. We got a whole lot more coming your way. We're talking NFL draft in Iowa with 5 players drafted with Scott Dochterman, plus his thoughts on what he saw at spring football as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Speaking of last-minute deals, my cousin Chuck, he was just up at the Timberwolves game on Sunday against the Lakers. He was there, and you can do the same. Last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Plus, I love this. They're all in pricing. I absolutely love having this in the Game Time app. No more surprise fees at checkout. You actually see what you're going to pay with the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and make sure you use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Scott Dochterman joins us. Recap the Hawkeye spring practice from Saturday. Take a look at the draft as Doc was heavily involved in that at The Athletic, and he joins us. Hello, Scott Dochterman, Trent, and Ken. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I'm watching this Oregon spring game this morning.
Are you?
Pretty good.
Nice.
So that's my morning.
Let's talk a little bit about the Hawkeyes in the draft and what we saw. 3 guys go in the 7th round. Of course, Kaleb Johnson, the first going to Pittsburgh, him along with Y.A. Black. Of the guys that were drafted, of the 5 there, we know Kaleb Johnson, he's going to get a great opportunity. That next tier, those final 4 guys, who do you believe has the best shot of sticking right away and being part of a 53-man roster?
It's got to be Y.A. Black. I mean, there's a reason why he was drafted higher than the other guys. He's when you get to the NFL or the NBA for that matter, and you're not what you call, like a lottery first round pick, a lottery pick type of person, you've got to have a skill that kind of sits with you and you can make sure works for you. And I think he's got one of those in that, in Pittsburgh's 3-4 defense, he's going to be a lineman that ties up blocks. A lot of times runs a 2 gap and is just really physical and does whatever he needs to do. And I think that's something that you can definitely use, especially when you have edge rushers the way that the Steelers do. So I think that's going to be, his, hallmark there. I mean, we know Kaleb Johnson is going to be at minimum a rotational back, if not the lead back there. So that's not a problem. And then, but I think YA is the one that's probably going to be the, a guy. If he doesn't start, he's going to be a heavy rotational guy.
I thought it was really cool how Seattle handed Mason Richmond's draft call.
Yeah.
Grace Zabel did it, which I thought was pretty good. Obviously, I think Richmond ends up in a pretty good spot, Doc.
Well, when you're a seventh rounder, it's you just got an opportunity, and I think that's what he got there. And with getting a call from the first round pick, I'm sure they're going to go share some Busch Lights up at least that's what Gray wants. Maybe they'll do something a little bit better or different in Seattle. There's a lot better beer there than Busch Light. No offense to anybody who likes it, but I think they should. They've got similar personalities, so I'd imagine that he'll have a good opportunity there with the Seahawks.
And then we go from 3 guys drafted in the 7th round to the undrafted guys. And Doc, you've said it to us before, and we hear it all the time. A lot of times it's better to be an undrafted free agent as opposed to that 7th rounder. So give us a name or two that you believe, again, has that opportunity. The fit made a whole lot of sense to you out of the Iowa undrafted free agents.
Kind of interesting. I would say, Sebastian Castro was a guy that I thought really had a chance to be, a draft pick. So going to Pittsburgh, I think is good for him. And now he's, one of 3 guys from this Iowa group going to Pittsburgh. It's kind of interesting that they picked up that many guys. Jay Higgins going to Baltimore. I think, Baltimore's, an elite program. I mean, it's kind of like, it's one of the best in the NFL and what it does and how it produces. But I think, having that chance to kind of, he can make the team as a backup. He doesn't have the special teams qualities that maybe Jake Hummel does, who's also a backup there. But I think he's, got potential to be an every down player, a backup linebacker with special team ability, as opposed to maybe Jake, who can be an elite special teamer. So I think he's got a chance to stick. And then Luke Elkin's kind of funny that he's going to be heading to Chicago to work with Torrey Taylor. I mean, that kind of move doesn't happen, out of the blue. So, whether the Bears think that he's their guy, but then also having that relationship with the punter who he snaps to, and then of course the holder, that's really important. So I would think that he maybe has the best chance of the ball.
Very interesting. Scott Dochterman joining us from the Athletic. Well, Doc, let's get to the field. What you saw from the with your own 2 eyes as the spring practice was Saturday morning. It's just, and everybody says the same thing. It just seems different this year, Doc, that the receivers, that they're looking like wide receivers for the first time since maybe they've been there. That's one of their big takeaways. And it's not even the starting quarterback who's throwing them the football at this point. Your thoughts on what you saw?
I was there. I was mainly concentrating on the draft, but I did have some moments where I could watch what they were doing on the field. And I do think that the wide receivers do look the part a little bit better than for what I've seen in the past. It's more difficult because they're getting, the ball thrown to them by a backup quarterback. And, but I thought that they are making plays. They're finding their spots a little easier. And that's something that I think is different than what we've seen before. And it always kind of comes down to, do you think that these receivers are improving? And then what does it mean about the defense and the defensive backs? It's always, in combination. And actually I came away with the defensive backs a little bit more impressed than I thought I would, just again, from the small moments that I actually get a chance to watch. And I think TJ Hall is fitting in really nicely as that, solid defensive back or cornerback. And we know that I'm pretty high on Zach Lutmer and Cohen Entringer. And Xavier Wampa was out, but I think they're got some questions at the other corner spot. I thought some of them flashed, but I think that's going to be a real big competition there come training camp.
We know it's going to be Mark Karnowski as the starter. Saw him throwing the ball around a little bit week before. He was just throwing a Nerf ball around, so there's some improvement making his way back from the shoulder. Hank Brown, Jackson Stratton, I know there's some good and some bad from both of those guys. Who do you believe is going to be, by the time we get to September, who's your pick to be the backup quarterback?
Oh, it's Hank Brown for sure. I mean, he was the starter pretty much throughout, and has kind of all the qualities you're looking for in a quarterback. Maybe he didn't have a lot of success, but it's hard to get a gauge on these games, and maybe I paid less attention to it than I normally even would because so many guys were out, and when you've got your center out and you've got your 2 others, starting returning linemen out, and It just, and a quarterback, of course, is too. It's hard to really get a gauge on it. But Hank Brown is your number 2, and unless Jeremy Heklinski can come in and win that job. But I just don't see Jackson Stratton, who's still a walk-on, really moving up to 2. Maybe he could be a 3, but that's probably where I'd put that. And Jimmy Sullivan, has flashed a little bit in camp or spring practice, but I don't think he's really the guy that's going to vault up the depth chart very quickly. So I would say Hank Brown this year, and then next year you get kind of a battle royale for the quarterback spot.
Do you think that Moulton came out of the spring as RB1?
Oh yeah, he's been RB1 since Kaleb stepped away. He's kind of fit that part. He's about 200 pounds now versus when he came in, he was about 170, and you kind of wonder, okay, is he going to be physical enough to carry this load? But now he looks that way. He's got every kind of quality that you want in a starting running back. Is he Caleb Johnson? No, not very many guys are, but he might be good enough and might be, his versatility is a little bit different than what Kaleb brought. And I think in some ways he may be even a little bit more complete. Maybe he doesn't have the elite traits that Caleb Johnson does, but I think he has enough qualities where he can be 1,000-yard back in the Big Ten and be very successful at what he does.
I guess one of the kind of concerning moments for some people was Drew Stevens missing kicks, just because it's such a rarity. We're not used to him missing kicks. Anything to take away? It's special teams. It's a long way before we get to September. Anything that you saw with him? And I guess the other part of it, the backup kicker, Caden Burr, doesn't have the leg of Stevens, but he was knocking some in from around 50.
Man, you're getting into foreign territory because I was paying more attention to Shedeur Sanders than I was Drew Stevens and on April, whatever it is. So I guess I would say that he's proven it in a game. He was really good last year when he needed to be. This last kick at Kinnick Stadium that people got to see was pretty good. So I don't think there's anything to worry there. The only thing I would worry about if I'm Iowa when it comes to special teams is now that, you got to go to 105, you're cutting off basically a third kicker, a third punter, and a third snapper. And you got to be a little bit more clear on what you want from those positions. Do
you think that's what it'll end up, Doc, or do you think that maybe that's coming, but not necessarily this year, that the 105 won't be enacted because it's just so late in the process?
I think some of those numbers I think some of them are going to get like a little bit of a boost. I could see football going up to say 110 maybe at the end of this whole thing, which really needs to be resolved yesterday as opposed to now,
for sure,
tomorrow or next week. So I would expect there to be a little bit of leeway there, but not a lot. I mean, teams, and I asked Kirk about this afterwards, that just in some ways his program and other ones like his program are penalized because back in December, he was up front with everybody, asking them to, telling them basically, well, as of right now, you're not on our 105. And we just wanted to let you know you can still, go on trips, go to visit campuses, still go to the bowl game with us, practice with us, but just giving you that heads up and that transparency. And so a lot of guys left and found good places. South Dakota State took in a lot of former Iowa players. And I think now they're at that point where, so now you're going to grandfather everybody in and they lost all these players. I think that would be really unfair. So I would expect there to be some leeway in certain sports, maybe not all of them, and football probably getting a handful of players back, but it's only going to be a 1-year thing. They're not going to extend this much longer than that.
Doc, thanks for jumping on. Appreciate it as always, Scott Dochterman. Thank you. What have you got at The Athletic this week?
Today, I just wrote about the draft and how it broke down by conferences and the fact that the SEC and Big Ten have about 60% of the picks.
Jeez.
And that's not ever going to go away because and then the group of 5 and FCS teams have really got a lot shorter went from 48 to 18 in a 5-year span. So that's really what's going to happen with the draft here from here on out, because the good G5 guys are going to go up and the good FCS guys are going to go up, and the Big Ten and SEC are going to reap the benefits as they always do.
I listened to George Payton and Sean Payton from the Broncos. They answered somebody asked a question about G5 schools, and do you even bother recruiting or scouting them anymore? And they said not like we used to, because they're there for a year and they all end up at the power conferences. So that's where we put our resources. You're 1,000% right. Doc, thank you as always, my friend. We'll talk to you in a week's time. Thanks, Doc.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yep, good to talk to you. Scott Dochterman, as we check in on Iowa.
Good stuff as always from Scott Dochterman. Appreciate that. Well, a lot of football talk today, but it's not just football going on. There is lots on the basketball scene, and Ben McCollum, he's not done. He is continuing to work in the transfer portal himself, including a new name. We'll tell you about him when we come back. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. The NBA playoffs are here. They've been incredible. I love what we've been seeing, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes it so easy to bet, whether it's picking my favorite team, the Timberwolves, or diving into player props. And Ant, he's been hitting those overs so many times here recently. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many different ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Not just the NBA. They already have lines up for college football. They got the over-under for Iowa this season. They got to win the Big Ten and a whole lot more over on FanDuel. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. FanDuel and online at FanDuel.com. Trent Condon back with you one final time. Thanks for being with us. Hey, hit that subscribe button if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening, a 5-star review helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. So, mention a little basketball talk here to wrap things up, and maybe a little bit of a surprising name. So we know Iowa's still looking for some help in the backcourt. Want another combo guard, another guy that can help with the ball handling. Kezza, Giffa is the name that was in this weekend. And also joining him on campus this weekend was what was described on many of the recruiting sites as somebody that was unknown. Well, unknown no more. It's Cade Tyson. So Cade Tyson played this last season at North Carolina. And for what they thought they were getting, it didn't go very well. Now, the ACC this year was dreadful. North Carolina was part of that dreadfulness. And it was one of the more down seasons, certainly I've seen in my 45 years around, of the ACC. It was a down year. But before he made his way, he started his career in Nashville at Belmont. And an incredible shooter. What do we know about Ben McCollum? What does he want out there? He wants shooting. 6'7", and probably small forward, power forward type, depending on the way that you're playing. That's what he's going to do. Last year, didn't play a ton at Carolina, only played 8 minutes a game. But for a guy that maybe can help you out like that, take that 8 minutes, maybe double it. 16 minutes a game, a reserve type of role. This is a pretty good guy. He's also visited Minnesota, and it appears that those are the teams that are looking out for him. But I don't know if this is something where it's as simple as just trying to find more shooting, more outside shooting, if you're going that direction. If we find out that Cade Tyson is more of a we'll see on Kezza Giffa, and if he does not commit, Iowa continues to search for big guys, or a real true rim protector. But the cost is outlandish. And not just the cost. And we talk about that cost a lot because that is probably the biggest part, and certainly for big men. But also that next tier of guy. I know we just want to see him fill out the roster, right? I kind of know what this roster is going to look like, but Ben McCollum's not going to bring in a big body just to bring in a big body. He wants to find somebody that can help. And he's not going to stretch the limits, and he's not going to go out there and bring in a guy just to do it because he happens to be 6'11". If he doesn't think he can play in the Big Ten, he's not going to bring him in. As we get deeper into the process, remember, there's still tons of uncommitted kids out there. Maybe that will change. But in the here and now, you're still trying to unearth those guys, set up a visit, sell what you're selling as a basketball program, and what you can also do financially. Do all those things. And I think that's where we are at this point in time. We'll see if any more names pop up, but there was a new one for you. Former North Carolina Tar Heel Cade Tyson was the secret visitor over the weekend. And of course, we got you covered each and every day. If anything breaks, we will be here to talk about it on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Mentioned coming up tomorrow, Brian Smith. We will be talking with Brian about everything going on in recruiting for Iowa football. Really looking forward to that. Brian does a great job with our show, The Portal. In fact, after you listen to Locked On Hawkeyes with your first listen, make sure you check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith's got the latest rumors, portal entries, signings. Be the most informed fan in college football and the craziness that's happening in college football with the portal. You can find the portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Your team every day. We got you covered here. And for more on the Iowa Hawkeyes, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Hawkeyes wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Mention Brian and I will be talking a lot of Iowa football recruiting. We got baseball to talk about. They got a midweek game coming up. We'll get into that. The Iowa softball team, not just solidifying themselves in the Big Ten tournament. Can they be an NCAA tournament team? And bubble watch for Iowa baseball. Some head-scratching things out there, and it comes down to numbers. All to come this week on Locked On Hawkeyes. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.